All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Amy, and I'm here again with Debbie, and we are excited for week 2 of our toolbox. So before we jump into week 2, I wanted to sort of connect us to last week on emotions. So we talked about emotions, and we gave you some tools for identifying emotions and naming them and giving each other the freedom to name them and to just be, like just to allow our emotions to kind of have a voice. And many times, once we've made that step to name that emotion, whether it's anger or sadness or whatever, sometimes that's enough for us to move to a healthier place. Other times, we need to do something with that emotion. And I showed you last week my little emotion stack of emotion cards. One thing we also have as a family is we have a stack of action cards that allow us, like, give my kids a visual for what do I do? I'm feeling very worried today. What do I do next? So we mentioned this last week, and I think it's worth repeating that a lot of these tools we're going to be rolling out over the next few weeks are great for having a greater communion with who the Father is and having more fellowship with the Holy Spirit. They're also great emotional action tools. So this first tool is a great example, nature. We are going to be jumping into nature, and it's a fairly simple thing to talk about, so we're not going to overdo it. But it is probably, if you're a parent, especially of young kids, it's your best tool for handling those tricky emotions when it seems like the emotion won't quite, release us, or when we're especially happy and we just need to do something with that happiness. Nature is often the best thing we can redirect to. So Debbie, tell us a little bit more about what the Bible has to say about nature and why we're talking about this and all that stuff.
Yeah, when you were just explaining that, I thought even I, like, when I go outside sometimes, like, the first thing I do is take a deep breath. There's something about an invitation to be in God's creation that just automatically it provides space. And when I look at scripture, there's like several key passages that kind of come to mind. First is Psalm 19, that the heavens are declaring the glory of God. That nature is speaking all the time, every day and every night, about who God is. It has something to teach us. It has something to give us about more knowledge of God. And then in Romans 1, Paul teaches us that we're all without an excuse to say we didn't know about God. We can be we want to be let off the hook because we didn't know. And Paul says, no, everybody has the chance to know because his creation reveals him. Yes. So again, it's another reference to the fact that God's creation is always speaking. It's testifying to his invisible nature. And so there's something to hear, there's something to learn when we are in his creation. And then Jesus tells us when we're stressed, like you said, when we have certain emotions that we don't know how to get a handle on them or to process them, to again go out into nature, look at birds, observe the wildflowers, because they're going to teach you something about where you fit into this whole scheme of God's world.
Yes.
And again, it's like, it's a place to go, to take a deep breath, to get perspective, and to be able to listen to something more in a different way that our heart can take in about God.
Yes.
Now, how do kids do that?
Nature with kids is, again, it's one of my best tools, and any educator will tell you that that's one of the most used or most effective tools in their toolbox, right? You want your kids playing at the playground, you want them outside. Teachers know, and teachers are really feeling right now that they're not in the classroom and they're not able to just send their kids outside, that we are made to be in communion with nature. And I think, first of all, what we see with kids is that physiologically, they are fed by being outside. And it's because it's a multisensory experience, right? They can hear things, they can taste things, they can smell things, they can see things, obviously. So my daughter is a sensory kid, and when she gets outside, she experiences it with her whole body. And so she's the kid that we would find buried in the mud, piling dirt on top of herself, and almost not even know that's what she was doing. She just likes to experience all of it with her hands. which right now that we're being careful about germs and we're being careful about what we touch and all that stuff, it's harder for her now because she has to be more controlled, and her body needs to experience it with its whole person. So physiologically, kids are fed by nature, and we could have so many examples for that. But I think second, a lot of studies have shown us, and actually secular studies and Christian studies have kind of shown us that kids seem to have this greater spiritual capacity. Now, it's not because they are born like already believers. We're not saying that, but they seem to have this capacity for hearing from God that even secular people have noticed. Like kids just seem to be uniquely suited to be able to hear or to understand things spiritually. And I think if nature is always talking, if nature always has something to say, because that's what God created his world to do, and our kids have a greater capacity for hearing from God, well, then it's no wonder that those two things work so well together. It's no wonder that nature can feed them both physiologically, but also spiritually and emotionally, because I think that's what God created us to do. I think he created our kids to be able to meet him in his world, which means he created all of us that way, right? Because we were all kids once. So that need doesn't go away, but our kids demonstrate for us the power of those two things working together. And you'll see it in their bodies. You'll notice it because my kids especially, but a lot of the kids I've worked with, they slow down when they get outside. The other day we were on one of our daily walks and my kids saw a nest that was only half built in a tree, and they like stared at it for 15 minutes. I mean, they were just so fascinated by it. And it actually wasn't all that impressive looking to me. I'd seen better nests, but they were so like, they were looking around to see where the bird must have gotten those materials. And they were looking all around the tree, and it was a tiny tree and a tiny nest. But they seem to have this ability to slow down, and it eventually worked itself into me, and I found myself just really fascinated by what that showed us, especially in a time when we are looking for hope actively because we don't always see it obviously right now. It was just a really neat spiritual experience for me, and I had come to it pretty crabby and pretty skeptical, if I'm being honest. But my kids gave me that example of how to kind of hear what nature has to tell us and to just slow down to listen to it.
It dawns on me as you're talking, it's like nature is not like a revolutionary idea, like, no. Oh geez, I go on Facebook and it's like there's lots of nature pictures right now. People are posting like, post a picture of a place that you've been, that's a beautiful nature shot and everything. So it's not like it's that, but it's more like, how are we bringing something, maybe a different perspective to it than we normally do? And I think as an adult, as I listen to your story about your kids, I'm challenged to think, how am I not bringing my agenda to it?
Yes.
Because often, maybe we're looking for that beautiful shot. So we can come back and post it on Facebook and say, look what I saw today. Yeah. How are we going into nature, whether we have children with us or not, with the heart of a child?
Yes.
With a listening spirit, with openness and freedom to say, I want to take a deep breath out here, and I want to listen to what God is telling me. How is God meeting me? Or how, if I do have kids, how am I just co-experiencing this with them like you did with your kids with the nest?
Right.
And how am I open to those experiences without being the teacher, without having to have too many words, with just my own wondering and ability to receive? What could we all be gaining right now if we kind of just flip the script a little, flipped the script a little bit, and listened more, learned how to be better listeners and observers of first our kids' experience, but then just of our own experience in nature.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's at the end of the day, what we're asking people to do this week, and what we are practicing ourselves as well.
Yes.
We're just asking you to kind of go out and experience nature in whatever way you can. We're going to give you a lot of practical suggestions that accommodate for bad weather. So there are lots of ways to experience God in his creation, but how are we just showing up to it without having already decided what it is God's going to teach us?
Yeah.
And it may not be that we get like this pretty little sentence of who God is and the thing he had to share with us, but we might find ourselves with more peace. We might find ourselves better able to slow down, with more energy to just do this hard thing in front of us.
Yeah.
And that's what we want for people, is just go and see what God has for you. And your kids are going to be great teachers in this, because they naturally don't come to God's creation with an agenda. They don't come ready to get that shot for Instagram.
Yeah.
They just go, and we can learn from them and we can experience that together. And so it's not hard to explain. It's not hard to do. I think we just have to get into the habit of doing it.
Yeah. And if all else fails, Jesus told us to do it. So
exactly,
we should probably give it a try.
Right. He seems to think it's good.
He seems to think it's good.
So there you go.
All right. Well, this is cool. There'll be ideas in the email, and some ideas for how they can even incorporate Easter into the whole thing too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm looking forward to just being in nature in a different way. And if you, I shouldn't say this. I almost want to say, hey, if you find a good picture, send it to us. But no, don't.
But don't.
Don't take pictures this week. Maybe next week.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Enjoy nature.
Bye.